Hello, welcome. We are now in the second week, so we're going to do a tiny bit of review and then we're going to start talking about the South, which is the Virginia colonies. Then next week we'll do the North, which is the New England colonies. Okay, so what have we covered so far? You looked at pictures to discuss preconceptions or misconceptions about the natives to us and us to the natives. We've talked about primary sources to discuss Native worldview. We've compared Native and European relationships, and we've worked on the circle story. So this week, you guys are going to be focusing on Virginia or the Southern colonies. And like I said, there's always a thesis, so definitely write that down because that'll make sense as to, why we're doing what we're doing. The Virginian or Southern colonies developed a culture based largely on the solutions to its initial problems. So this video will be talking about the problems, and next video we'll be talking about the solutions. So first we'll take a look at a map, then we'll look at Virginia problems. We'll do a little fun exercise on Pocahontas, and then next video we'll talk about the solutions. So take a look at this map. This shows the southern colonies down on the bottom. The only one we'll be focusing on is Virginia. We won't be doing the middle colonies. I normally do those when I can have a whole year to discuss everything, but since we have a half a year, we kind of got to skip some stuff. And then the New England colonies, or the North, is Massachusetts and Rhode Island. Just a quick word about the middle colonies. Pennsylvania was known for having Quakers who were believed that God lived in everyone, and so they were really good at fighting for African American rights and women's rights. And New York, from beginning to end, was all about making money. But anyways, we'll be talking about the South and then the North. And the South, remember, the main point is slavery, right? We don't get slavery right away, but that's going to be obviously a big, big point. And then the North and New England is all about religion. Okay, so we're going to do a bit of background. We're going to go all the way back to the 1300s. Remember, our country starts about the 1600s as colonies, but we're going to go back to the 1300s because we're going to look at why did people come here? And it actually starts way back then, but remember, this is all about Europe. And please, again, take some notes because I'm going to ask you to summarize what I'm doing here. Usually when we're in class, I can do a lot more interaction and, group discussion and brainstorming and stuff. But I have to, obviously change things because of online. But hopefully you'll still enjoy it. Okay, so Black Plague, really, really bad. This was 1300s and 1400s. About 1/3 of Europe died with the Black Plague. Really, really painful, really, really bad. So in the 1500s, without disease, we're going to get population growth. And as a result, we're going to get what's called the price revolution. So just a couple real easy economic questions. This is about my level of understanding in economics. But if 10 people want one job, will the job have to pay high wages or low wages? Well, they can pay low wages, right? Because so many people want the job. If 10 people want one apple, will the apple cost a lot of money or little money? It costs a lot of money, right? They can get that large amount of money because so many people want that apple. So taking a look at this, you can see population going up, you can see grain prices going up, and you can see wages going down. That's what's called price revolution. So what's going to happen, let me actually go back, is people that own land are going to do better in this time period, and people that are renting or living with people who are renting are not going to do so well. So usually what I would do is I'd get 6 students to stand up and I'd give the first couple money because they are doing well, they own land. Then the next person is going to be renting land and I'm going to be taking money away from that person. The next one is a laborer who lives with the person who rents, and they are going to get money taken away. And then the last person is called the landless poor. So they really don't even have a place to live, and they're walking around. I actually have the student walk around. Hopefully they have a good sense of humor. And then the rich people get to decide what to do with the landless poor. Well, this is irritating to watch people that are homeless, right? As a rich person, I think that. So I'm going to say, you need to get out of here. We need to either put you in jail or you need to go to America. So that's how the original people went to America, is because this whole price revolution, and they were the landless poor. Well, the next thing that happens is the enclosure movement. And what this is we're going to enclose the fields. We're going to get rid of all of our renters, and we're going to have sheep. So what's going to happen here is the people that are even renting the land are now going to become landless poor. So yeah, the laborer is now landless poor, the renters are landless poor. So all those people end up, a lot of them go to jail, or they end up having to go to America. Okay, so I'm going to show you something that's a little, I think, humorous. But this is, remember we talked about defining a term, the kind of BS answers? Well, this is a perfect example. So the enclosure movement was something that ceased a lot of things. This stopped a lot of things that were taking place, and they had to be stopped. Enclosure movement was a very dramatic change for everyone. People had to get used to what was taking place and how to operate with or without the things they were used to having. This movement left people affected and also in a crisis. So as the teacher here says, this does not address in any way the enclosure movement. So obviously you definitely need to define your terms. But what I need you to do for your question 1 is explain the economic background and reasons people came to the New World using the following terms. So Black Plague, population growth, price revolution, and enclosure movement. So hopefully you're taking notes and paying attention. If not, you can go back in the video and get the same information. But obviously I don't want anything from the internet. I just want what I've said here, which I obviously know what I've said. Okay, so now we're going to go into Virginia, and we're going to talk about Virginia problems. Remember, A1 was background. A2, this is actually a picture of John Smith. So we think of John Smith in the movie Pocahontas, where he looks like he's 30 years old, but actually that's not true. He was older than that. John Smith was one of the first people over in the New World in Virginia. So you don't need to write this down, but let me just show you what the original problems were, because there were plenty. So they found the Jamestown around 1607. John Smith actually leaves and goes back to England. But by the next year, 90% of the original settlers are dead. So there's only 60 of 600 alive. By 1610, 1,200 more come. Remember all those people, the landless poor? But by 1616, only 350 are still alive. So what happened? So usually what I can do is give some hints, and then again, we can have a brainstorming session. Can't do that, so I need to tell you, and then we'll go over, hopefully you could do a little bit of guessing on your own. But why did so many people die? So kind of be thinking about that. What do you think? And maybe even write down some ideas. It's proven academically that if you guess beforehand, that you remember about 30% more. So brainstorming is very crucial, because then you're more invested. But hint 1, John Smith asked them to work 4 to 6 hours. So think about that. The next thing is, I usually show this Pocahontas, but as we've talked about, the system I'm using does not like to take things from YouTube, as you could tell from that Old Navy commercial that didn't go well at all. So I'm just going to show you a picture, but this is from Pocahontas, Mine, 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 if you want to listen to it. It's pretty interesting. But this is one of the leaders, and he wants gold. He wants them to mine for gold, and that was their total focus, and that he wanted to become, part of the king's court because of what he discovered in Virginia. It didn't go so well, but that's what he wanted originally. Also, this idea of El Dorado, where we have, the fountain of youth and this whole gold city. So those are things that are motivating people to come. So think about, why did so many people die? Okay, so usually what we do is put things on the board, and then I go over the reasons. So here's the first reason. We're going to look at 2 different kinds of population that came to Virginia. The first is on the left. His name is William Byrd, and he actually was a little bit later, but he's a very good example. So if you look at this guy, does he look like he wants to get his fingernails dirty farming? Absolutely not. He was what, and make sure you write this down, what was called a second son. Second son. So remember, in Europe, it's the first son that gets everything. Primogeniture, Primogenniture. So the second son is, pretty spoiled, but doesn't have any money. So these guys had to come over and they were trying to find wealth for themselves. Now, just a couple words on William Byrd. Later on, like I told you before, there's no slavery at first in Virginia, but later on, when we have slavery, William Byrd has a slave drink a pint of the slave's urine, because the slave was having problems wetting the bed. So he's a real jerk. Another time, he said he was sitting on the bed with Mrs. Chiswell, who began to cry, and then his wife came in. So these original guys were very into dominance. That's a big theme with Virginia, which again is going to lead us into slavery, right? Okay, the second picture to the right is criminals. So people who were criminals were given a choice of either going to prison in England, which would probably lead to death, or coming over to America, which again is probably going to lead to death. But think about these guys. Are either of these guys hard workers? No. I mean, criminals like to pickpocket and make other people do their work. Second sons want other people to do their work. So they are pretty lazy, selfish, and greedy. Remember we talked about that? So ignorance is the first reason why so many people die. They don't know how to work. And again, you can't have to say more than ignorance, right? You need to have all those details. Okay, this is the second reason on why so many people die. So take a look at where Jamestown is. It's surrounded by water, right? And in the south, it's hot water, which attracts mosquitoes, which leads to a lot of disease. On top of that, they had the worst drought in, I think recently we had the worst drought in 400 years. They had the worst drought in 600 years. So the water was so bad that if you drank it, I mean, it would make you insane. On top of that, average age is going to be, 40, dying in this area. So they are surrounded by this hot water. They are not doing well. And why did they live so close to the water? We'll look in the upper right-hand corner. It's because the natives, they wanted to be protected from the natives. So they built their stuff right next to the hot water. So the second point is going to be they were died because of ignorance, and then also too debilitated by hunger and disease. So I want you to take a look at the primary source, the starving time. You're going to go to the readings on Blackboard. You're going to see the readings and find this primary source. List 2 quotes with analysis. In other words, restate each quote with in your own words. So tell me what happened during the starving time. Focus on that primary source. Okay, so next one is a communal system and attitude toward work. So the people that set up Virginia thought that a communal system would work. And let me tell you what that is. So it's like communism where everybody shares. Now think about people that are lazy, selfish, and greedy. If one person works 8 hours and one person works 2 hours, under a communal system, everybody gets paid the same. So is somebody, that's lazy, selfish, and greedy going to want to work 8 hours when he can only work 2 hours? No. So that was a big part of the problem. That's why John Smith says, I want you to work 4 to 6 hours. If you just work that amount, you wouldn't be starving to death. The second thing is attitude toward work. And let me show you 2 pictures. So over to the left is how they worked in England. It was pasture farming. So, do you have to, work really hard with that? No, you just sit and watch the sheep eat grass, right? They're not used to super hard work. On top of that is what's called guilds, Guilds, guilds. So look at over here. We have tailors, we have coopers, we have millers, we have these people that are the dyers. So whatever your great-great-great-grandfather was, and this was all established in the medieval age, like the, 1000 to 1300, that's what you would be, and you wouldn't know how to do anything else. So the people that came over from Europe knew how to do something specific, like maybe make champagne glasses or make chandeliers. And, those are not very useful skills. So keep this in mind because we are going to be comparing this to New England where they did come over with more practical skills. But yeah, these people, the guilds really, just like a union today, if any of you work for a union or have parents that work for unions, you're not allowed to do anything else. And that's how guilds were. You weren't allowed to do anything else except for these kind of not super helpful skills when you're, starving. So that is the communal system and attitude toward work. The last point is going to be Spanish myth. And we did talk about this our first day, if you remember. So remember, this is the 1600s, but they look back in the 1500s at Cortez and Montezuma. And remember what we said, that the natives thought that Cortez and Pizarro and these different conquistadors were gods. And so they gave them everything. They gave them gold. They gave them whatever they wanted. And the lazy, selfish, greedy people in the 1600s looked back and they said, oh, that sounds like a great deal. I want that. So they had the Spanish myth, right, that encouraged them to come over, but not to work very hard. So think about these things and how this led to people dying. And that's actually your big question for 3, 4, 5, and 6. Restate the following reasons in answer to the question, why did so many people die? And for 2, debilitated by hunger and disease, if you want to include some points from the starving time, that'd be great because you really need to practice using primary sources in your answer. But again, I don't want anything from the internet. I want just what we just did here. Okay? All right, so now this is going to be our last activity for today. And in Blackboard, you'll see 4 different versions of the Pocahontas story under the, well, I'll make it real clear. So one's the Disney version, one's the actual historical version. That's a little bit longer. One is from a Christian perspective and one is from the Native perspective. So just so you know, it's Chief Roy Crazy Horse, the Powhatan Nation. He hates John Smith. He hates the whites. He believes everything's hostile. So don't take him for his word, okay? Because he hates everybody, just like the Disney version. Don't take that from your word, from the word or Christian perspective. The only one that's really super accurate is the historical version. But what I want you to do is there's going to be 7 questions, and normally I can do this in groups, but obviously we can't now. So please answer the following questions for 2 of the accounts. Make sure I know which accounts you're using. So this is going to be worth 8 points. This is going to be worth a lot of points. So first do, 1 through 7 on one perspective, or you can do them both at the same time, but make it really, really clear which perspectives you're using, okay, for full points. Okay, so remember, this is our thesis. The Virginia and Southern colonies developed a culture based largely on the solutions to its initial problems. What were the original problems? And we've talked about that, right? Okay, and these would be the original problems. And that's it for the first video for today.